Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Daily Bullet, the Second Amendment Foundation's program, where we talk with people who are making a difference in gun rights. Joining me again, Rachel Malone. She is a GOA person in Texas, and she's got some great news to share with us. Rachel, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, Paul. Always great to join you. Thanks for asking.
So let's talk Texas. Constitutional Catty, is it really going to happen this time around?
Well, I'm not going to make an actual prediction of how far it's going to go, but I can tell you we're going to push it as far as we can. But I do have some really exciting news that a lot of folks in Texas and beyond have been waiting for. We got a really good, solid constitutional carry bill filed this past week, as well as some additional legislation that also on the topic. So we've got legislation now, both, excuse me, both in the House and in the Senate, which is meaningful.
Okay, so where should we start?
Yeah, so let's start with HB 1238. That is a bill by Representative Kyle Biederman, and many Texans may remember that he did announce a few months ago that he was committing to file the bill, and it's taken a while to get it through Legislative Council, to get it drafted. Because Texas gun law right now is so convoluted, we've got places referring to the license requirement in all sorts of different sections of code, like so many different places. So it does take a lot of time to make sure that a bill is thorough, that it addresses everything appropriately. And in addition to that, Legislative Council, which is the agency that does the official drafting, they've been running really far behind and blaming it on COVID, who knows exactly what's happening. But anyway, so that's why it's been this amount of time to get it through. But I think Leg Council did a very good job with the bill, being very thorough, making Texas code maybe a little bit less convoluted in the process, doing some cleanup. So HB 1238 would repeal the general ban on carrying a handgun outside of your property, your vehicle, etc. And it would state that if you can legally possess a handgun, a firearm, under state law and federal law, you can legally possess, you can carry it, open or concealed, without a license, in the same places and in the same way that a license holder can currently carry a handgun. Okay.
Now, that would not remove the 30-06 and 30-7 signs, I believe they are. The only thing it would do would just remove the Mother May I to the government to get your permit.
Exactly. It removes the jumping through a hoop, which is that's what I define constitutional carry as. You don't need a permit to carry. If you own it, you should be able to carry without a permit, open or concealed, your choice. And that's exactly what it does. And for some people, some Texans and others, this is a concept that we've been working for a long time. We're excited to push it and see it happen. For some gun owners, maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. I talked with a gentleman this past week who said he was in a different state that's anti-gun controlled, and so he's just trying to make sure they don't pass further gun control. And I mentioned the idea of constitutional carry, of repealing that permit requirement. And his first response was, well, but yes, I believe it's your right to carry, but people really should have training. I don't want just anybody carrying a gun without training. They should have some training. And so I had to break it down. I said, okay, think about it this way. I agree with you. People should have training. They should carry a quality handgun. They should get a lot of training every single year. They should have a quality holster. They shouldn't talk meanly to their spouse. They should eat healthfully. They should look both ways before they cross the street. There are a lot of things that people should do in order to stay safe. But let's think about, what do we want to ask the government to force people to do and to throw them in jail if they refuse to do it, sometimes with either a strong misdemeanor or even a felony offense, and if they refuse to go to jail and fight back against that, shoot them. Do we really want the government to put that kind of penalty on people if they just don't jump through a hoop? And when I presented it that way, he had to say, well, I hadn't thought about that. No, I wouldn't want the government to do that to somebody who was carrying safely, not committing a crime, not assaulting anybody, not being, not recklessly endangering people, and just simply hadn't jumped through the government hoops. So that is the heart of constitutional carry, and that's why I'm pushing it here in Texas.
So it's been introduced. Has it got a committee assignment? Where in the process is it?
So no bills have gotten committee assignments. We don't have committees assigned yet. So I'm optimistic that within hopefully the next week or two, definitely by early February, we should have committee assignments and know who's our committee chair, who are the committee members, and then shortly thereafter, the speaker should start referring bills to committees. Then we'll have a group of people to meet with and to target for conversations to make sure that bill gets a hearing and it gets through committee, because as you know, that's the all-important thing. It's not just vote for it when it gets to the floor, it's make sure it gets to the floor, give it the hearing, give it the vote to get out of committee, and get it scheduled on the floor.
Absolutely. I can't count the number of times in my home state of South Dakota that good bills have died in committee because there's just not enough people showing up to pressure the people on the committee to move it on.
Yeah. Right. And the thing that actually got me involved in politics was realizing that bills die not because people voted against them, but because people refuse to take action, refuse to let people have the vote. And that still angers me today when that happens. And that's still what I want to push to make sure stuff at least gets a vote. We know who supports it and who doesn't, and we can address that at that point.
Okay. Is there on the good, the constitutional carry, come on, that's the big one. But are there other good ones that are up in front of the legislature that we need to pay attention to in Texas?
Actually, yes. And I won't spend as much time on these. We'll just kind of run through them. But in the face of disasters on the federal level and all sorts of gun control looming, and including really bad bills filed in Texas, I think it's important to be aware that there is good legislation here in Texas, and fighting for our gun rights doesn't mean just stopping gun control. We have to move forward with freedom. So here's a list of some bills that GOA will be prioritizing. I will be prioritizing these bills. There's a Senate resolution. It's called an SJR, SJR 24 by Senator Bob Hall. It proposes a constitutional amendment to say that the legislature may not require a permit for citizens to carry a handgun. So, in effect, it would nullify the license law. It's not the comprehensive laying out all the code the way it will be, but it will say, hey, you can't require a license. All your license requirements are null and void. So that's another approach to constitutional carry by constitutional amendments. And then we've got another whole category of bills that I call them just protection against infringement. And with what's happening at the federal level, that's super important right now. So we've got a number, at least 3 bills right now and several others looking at being filed for federal firearms protection that would essentially say that the state of Texas, our entities, our resources, we are not going to enforce any federal gun grab regulations, for guns, ammo, accessories, suppressors, whatever else. And there's the bills vary slightly. Some of them only apply to future infringement. Some of them apply to any of those laws that don't exist in Texas law. And one of them also provides for a penalty up to a Class A misdemeanor for individuals who actually go and try to enforce these gun grab laws. So say you have, one individual cop who goes and tries to enforce, well, he could face a Class A misdemeanor as a penalty for that. So that's our general federal firearms protection. We've got a Made in Texas Act that would declare that guns made in Texas, from parts in Texas, sold in Texas, basically they stay in Texas, all Texas parts, they are not subject to federal regulations. And yeah, that's a battle that would be fought in the courts. But I want to have that. I think the time has come to really push that. That's time. And even better, the way the law is put, you don't have to go to jail to test it out. If you want to do this thing and make your guns like the Made in Texas guns, you can tell the Attorney General of Texas, and he has to file a petition for a declarative judgment to say that, yes, this law is constitutional and you're not going to go to jail. So that's a helpful component. Usually you got to have somebody who goes to jail to test it out. You wouldn't for this. So that's cool. And then a couple others.
Let me ask, if I could, on that one. The one question that popped into my head, so I know a lot of viewers are going to have the same question. does that apply to weapons with a fun switch?
So, what it would say is they are not, no, firearms are not subject to federal regulations. They're only subject to state regulations. I'm going to have to get back with you on the specifics of how that would work out right now. It would say if the state wants to ban something, the state can ban it. So it's not stopping the state. It's just saying that, look, you can't, or you can affirmatively make firearms here in Texas that are not subject to any federal regulations.
Okay. All right. So what's next?
Yeah, sure. So some folks may have heard of the anti-red flag law that was introduced in Oklahoma. There's one very similar introduced here. And just to be really clear, a state legislature in one session, say this year, the Texas legislature can't prohibit a future Texas legislature from doing something. Like, the legislature always has authority to pass a bill if they want to pass a bill, pursuant to its being constitutional. But the anti-red flag law would say that we're not going to be a part of any federal red flag law scheme. We're not going to participate. We're not going to take money with strings attached. It says that we have to implement red flag laws. And importantly, it's going to say that local government entities cannot try to enforce and try to make these red flag law type policies happen. And right now, we have some large counties trying to enact kind of red flag light the best they can. So this would keep them from doing that. So that's positive. And then the last in this category is emergency powers. So right now, in Texas and in many other states, the governor does have the authority during a state of disaster or emergency to regulate firearms in a very broad manner, regulate the use, the transportation, the sale of firearms. Thankfully, this past year during COVID, our governor didn't touch that, but you never know what a future governor might do. Right. And so we want to repeal that emergency power, and there have been at least 2 bills filed that would repeal that power. So those are just some general protections against infringements that we'll be prioritizing.
The concern I have for a bill like that is because when it gets to the governor's desk, the governor has to agree to give up power, and it takes a special governor to do that.
It does. And I think it helps that this is not a bill that's directed at our governor, because our governor didn't abuse that power. He didn't try to regulate guns. In fact, his administration, or the Attorney General, who is elected statewide, declared that because of our preemption, gun stores have to stay open. So that was positive here. I think, we're set up, at least with the governor, who wouldn't just take that as an affront, I hope, because he didn't abuse it. This is not directed at him.
Right. All right, so we're coming up on time, and I knew this was going to happen, but we need to, if we could, kind of quickly, there's got to be, and there's a lot of good stuff, there's got to be some in the not so great category too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what we see happening in the not so great category, we've got the huge California style, like the so-called assault weapon bans. It would ban your commonly used firearms, magazines that hold over 10 rounds. We've got those things filed. They're horrible. They're shock and awe for this year. We've got several full-blown red flag laws passed that would say that it would give the government authority to remove or suspend your gun rights and ban you from possessing firearms before you've committed a crime, based on thought crime, essentially. So obviously we're going to oppose that. We've got expanded background checks, or universal background checks that would say that anytime you transfer a gun to someone, you're not going to the gun store, you're just transferring it, selling it to your friend, selling it or loaning it to someone, maybe even someone in your family, maybe loaning it so they can go shoot at the range. You have to go and get a background check. So effectively banning private sales. So those huge, terrible lies. There are a lot of bills proposed that would ban carry of rifles outside of your own property or outside of maybe a range. That's huge because Texas has never regulated or banned generally the carrying of rifles. So there's that. And then there's the sneaky bills, and this is what I'm a little more concerned about passing in a Republican legislature. because of their nature. They don't ban a single gun. They just ban the way they control the way you think about guns. So, for example, you have to store guns in a safe when you're not wearing them, restricting children's access, and putting penalties if your child gains access to a firearm, raising those penalties, and making them more severe regardless of whether your child does anything bad with a firearm or hurts anybody. So those are the sneaky ones that we're going to have to really watch out for, and call them out as being gun control and say, look, you want to do something, don't pass that. Pass the bills that restore our freedom. And super quick, one other bill that I'm excited about that we will be prioritizing is a Domestic Violence Victim Protection Act that would say that if you have been a victim of family violence and you have that protective order protecting you, the paper's not going to do any good. You can carry a firearm, no license required, as long as you're 18 and you can legally possess it. You can carry in all the gun-free zones because it recognizes that a piece of paper is not going to protect you. You need to be able to be armed and defend yourself.
I want you to reiterate that because that's huge.
Yes, it is huge.
Carry in a gun-free zone in some, it's got a 30-6, 30-7 sign. You can still carry there if you're a victim of family violence and you've got the restraining order.
So the gun-free zones would be government-mandated gun-free zones, including like a school. Maybe they work at a school. They wouldn't be banned from carrying in those places, and that would be if you are if you have in place a protective order protecting you, all the various types of those orders, or if you're a member of the family or household, and you can show that. You can carry open or concealed without a license, as long as you're 18 and you can legally possess a firearm. And those government-mandated gun-free zones, they don't apply to you. You can still carry because this bill recognizes gun-free zone doesn't stop abusers from carrying weapons or attempting to harm their victims. And our victims need to be able to fight back and be their own first defenders.
That is probably the most positive thing, other than constitutional carry, which, let's face it, it's great. It needs to happen, but it still leaves those gun-free zones in place. And for people that, you and we've talked about this before when you were on A Polite Society. Look, the people that have these restraining orders are in the most instant need of self-defense, and sometimes it's the easiest to be taken away.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to give a shout out to Representative Tom Oliverson, Dr. Oliverson. He's been a great friend of GOA. He's filed this bill. It's HB 1094. If you're in Texas, you want to go ask your reps to co-author, put their name on HB 1094 and support it. That's the Domestic Violence Protection Act. Ask them also definitely to put their name on HB 1238 by Representative Biederman. That's Constitutional Carry HB 1238. Strongly support those and ask everyone to contact their legislators for that.
Fantastic. Well, if somebody is in Texas and they want to become more involved, they want to become more effective, I know you're doing all kinds of stuff to help people do that. Could you briefly let people know what you're doing and how they can get in touch?
Yes. So 2 things that y'all can do. You can go to gunowners.org/Texas. That's gunowners.org/Texas. Scroll to the bottom of the page, put in your email address and your zip code, and you will get our email alerts letting you know what's happening throughout session. Make sure you're watching for those. Don't let them end up in spam. So that's one thing to do. Make sure you're getting our emails. The second thing to do, if you want to be even more deeply involved and connected with the team from your district that's working with your legislators to push them on these issues, and that's going to have a specific strategy, send a text to this number, 512-937-3006. That is 512-937-3006. And just say, I want to sign up. Give me your name, your email address, and your zip code. And I'll connect you with that team that's working to fight for gun rights in your district, because we need you. You're the tip of the spear. We can't do it without you. Make sure you're a part of this team.
Awesome. Well, we are totally out of time. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Paul.
Folks, if you would please subscribe to the channel, and when you do, hit that notification bell so you know when we release another video, which we will be doing tomorrow. Thanks for watching.